Hi there, welcome to Swedish Odds and Ends, the show where we learn a little bit about everything. Today we're going to talk about fishing. More specifically, we're going to try and catch some garfish. Won't you join me? When the temperature starts to get warmer in the water, the garfish start their migrations from the Atlantic towards their breeding grounds in the region of the Baltics and north of there. When we reach about mid-May, they pass by the southwestern Swedish coast, so a good benchmark is that around about Ascension Day you can go out and get garfish. Now, garfish is a very grateful beginner fish because it doesn't take any particular amounts of equipment. You can use a bait casting jig or a spinning reel, it doesn't really matter. The important thing is that you have something that lets you get the distance out into the water so that you can get to where the fish is. On the topic of lures, it's also a very straightforward matter when it comes to the garfish. You basically only want something that is shiny, that will entice their hunting behavior, and something that is heavy, so you can get far into the water, as I said before. These are the traditional garfish lures sold in the fishing shops. The difference between these two is that this one has been fitted with a hook extender, something that has entered the market over the past few years as far as I'm concerned, or as far as I can remember. The goal of that, of course, is to make sure that when the fish bites, it bites up towards the lure, swallowing the hook, so it goes deeper into the fish, and thus minimizing the risk of the fish spitting it out and you losing it before you manage to land it. My personal favorite for fishing garfish is the spinning reel on, in this case, an 8-foot fishing pole. Like I said, anything will work just as long as you get the distance out into the water. The garfish is a bit special as opposed to other fish because they don't go as deep. So you're going to want to reel in faster than you would with usual fishing because the garfish is very much up in the surface water where it's warmer. We didn't manage to land lots of fish, but we did land a couple, so now we're going to talk about how to clean them. So, this is the garfish. One of the ones that I caught. Unfortunately, by the size of it, it's most likely a male. The females are larger than the males are. We are now going to clean it up so that we can use it for something, and the easiest way to do that is to start by removing the head. The easiest way to do that, I find, is to put your thumb right here underneath its shin, so the gills spread open like this, and then you take your knife and draw a clean cut down like this. We then take your knife, right here you have a little bit of cartilage, so you put your knife tip through that and cut it open like that in preparation for later. We then turn the fish around, find the anal opening, put our knife in there very shallowly, aiming the tip as upwards as we can so as not to nick the internal organs, and cut it all along the belly like this. Now, once we have completed our cut, we can open it up and reveal the innards. They can easily be removed like this and taken all the way from the front of the fish like this to the back of the fish. Tearing it out like this, making sure that everything is removed. Next, you see down here at the bottom there's a silvery sort of membrane. That is the swim bladder, if I am correctly informed, and that needs to be punctured. So we take our knife like this, make a slight incision like so, and then we can take our finger in and remove it. Once the swim bladder is removed, we have a dark matter up here next to the spine. That is the fish's liver, and we want to remove that, and the easiest way to do that is to take your nail and scrape along the way like this, washing it off as we go. There. That looks about right. Now what we're going to do is to cut off a few cartilaginous part and the fins, because those aren't edible anyway. So what we do is, right here in the front where the gills have been, we take our scissors and we cut it off right behind the fin, like so, repeating it on the other side. Then we take the fin here and the cartilage that it is attached to down here and remove that. Matching it on the other side, of course. And then we take the anal fin all the way back from here where it meets the body. There. We will repeat it with the rear dorsal fin. And we will finish off by taking the tail. There. Now that we've cleaned up the fish, what we need to do is to scale it, or rather descale it, removing the scales. So what we do is we take our knife like this, pointing the edge of the knife at a 90-degree angle towards the fish, making light contact to the skin, and then scraping along like this, raising the scales up and tearing them loose. And we will need to do that both on the sides of the fish and the rear up on the back. These are the scales that we want. When the last of those are removed, then we are done. A good guiding principle is when you can move it along the skin like this and you don't hear any rasping sounds, that's a good indication that you have removed all the scales. And there we are. That is a garfish properly cleaned up. Now let's move on to the salting, as I'm going to smoke it later. What we'll need first of all is some manner of vessel that will house your fish. In this case we only have the 3, so it doesn't have to be something horribly large. What we'll then need is to measure out how much water is required to cover the fish entirely. So we'll start by counting. Turns out 3 litres is quite alright. It just barely covers it, so we're going to make the calculations from 4 litres. What we're now going to do is calculate the amount of salt we need for our brine. You're aiming for ideally a saline solution of 7 to 10%. I prefer my smoked garfish rather salty, so I'm aiming for the 10%. And for the 4 litres of water, that will make it about 400 grams. So let's weigh that out, shall we? So here we have 400 grams of salt, rather coarse salt in this case. I put it in the litre jug so that I can take the last litre of water and try to solve as much of the salt as possible into the liquid before pouring it in with the fish. And now all we have to do is stir it repeatedly until solved. When it appears that the solution will take no more salt, then we can pour it over into the larger vessel and solve the last of it there. When basically all of the salt is dissolved, our brine is done. A few undissolved grains here and there aren't going to make a lot of difference, so what we're going to do now is to leave this sitting for about 3 to 4 hours, letting the brine soak into the fish properly. Then we're going to move on to the smoking process. While our fish has been in the brine, evening has rapidly closed in on us, so it's time to dress a little bit warmer. We are rapidly approaching time to smoke our fish, and that is going to be done in this, a smoking barrel, basically. It is a compartmentalized barbecue that has been extended on the height so as to have the fire down here. Inside, about here, you have a saucer of water which is going to keep the temperature of what you're smoking down so as not to cook it with the heat. You rarely exceed 70 to 80 degrees Celsius. So the smoke is what's going to be doing most of the curing and cooking of the food. What we are going to be using are these ignition cubes and a source of fire to start the initial flame. That is then going to be placed underneath this, which is a charcoal and briquette igniter. In it we place our charcoal briquettes. I prefer using briquettes at least, because they deliver a very even, long heat, which is perfect for what we're going to be doing this evening. The initial fire from the ignition cubes is going to ignite the briquettes. Once they are ignited, we're going to pour them into the bottom of the smoking barrel, adding water to the saucer, and then placing our fish at top. I'm going to be using alder to be smoking this fish because I personally like the flavour very much of it, but you can use basically any non-toxic wood that you like, depending on your own tastes. Let's get going, shall we? I have preloaded the igniter with the charcoal briquettes, and I have stacked some of the ignition cubes at the bottom of the smoke barrel. So we'll take our source of ignition, turn it on, and get the cubes burning. As you can see, they are a little bit of a challenge to get to burn and stay lit. This is because they provide a very slow burn over a long time, so as to easier ignite the charcoal briquettes. Once you have them burning though, then we can add our igniter on top like this. The igniter is designed so as to have some holes at the bottom that allow air inside, which fans the flame, allowing the fire to burn hotter and thus igniting the charcoal briquettes. I would say that those briquettes are sufficiently ignited. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take this very carefully, like so, avoiding any nasty burns, and tip them into the bowl like this. Now we're going to make sure that our briquettes are spread evenly and that they're all beneath the level that the grate will then sit on. There we are. I have installed the top portion of the barrel with the water bath and the grill on which our fish is going to be placed. So now we are going to take our fish, place it on the grate, and attempt to open it up as much as possible so as to give as much surface area as we can for the smoke to get to. Some of you may be wondering about the wire at the tail end of one of the fish. That is because two of these fish, the ones that are on the smoker at the moment, are quite the same size, so as to be able to keep track of who caught which fish for when they are smoked, we place that wire of stainless steel through the fin end of one of them. Mine, however, as you can see, is quite a bit smaller, so that will not be a problem to identify. This is our smoking box. I have preloaded the Alder chips into it, and the purpose of this box is to keep the chips away from the direct heat so that they can avoid burning, so that they can smolder and release their smoke instead. I can put it in with my bare hands like this, because it hasn't been inside. Once it is time to refill it though, I am going to have to use some manner of pliers or the like, otherwise I'm going to burn myself quite severely. Let's get the box inside, shall we? Now, it should only be a matter of minutes before the chips start to smolder, release their smoke, and the cooking and preparing of the fish can start proper. As expected, in a mere few minutes, wisps of smoke are starting to exit through the ventilation hole, and that tells us that the process is underway. This is now going to be allowed to smoke for about 2 hours. The amount of wood chips that you have to add during the process is a matter of personal preference. I'm probably going to add new ones every 20 minutes, every half hour or so. It's a matter of how quickly it burns through the chips that are in it. But I'd say about a half-filled smoke box of Alder every half hour or so would give an intense smoke flavour, but not an overpowering or unpleasant one. So, let's give it time to do its magic, shall we? After the garfish was finished smoking late last night, I put it in the refrigerator so as to solidify the liquid fat that had oozed to the surface, and next morning this is the fruits of our labour. All that's left now is to separate the flesh from the skin and the bones and enjoy. So now you know how to catch and prepare a South Swedish delicacy. I hope you enjoyed it, and see you next time.